When I look back, I realize my marriage didn't fall apart because of lies. It cracked under the weight of someone else's truth, or what she thought was the truth. My mother never liked my wife. From the day I brought Anna home, she said she didn't trust that smile. She said women like her were dangerous, the kind who could make a man forget his own mother. At first, I thought it was just overprotectiveness. But over the years, it became poison. Every holiday turned into an interrogation. Every phone call, a warning. And every time Anna got pregnant, my mother said the same thing. Don't be naive, Mark. You should make sure that baby's yours. I laughed it off the first time. The second time, I was angry. By the third, I just stayed quiet. Our third child, Sophie, was born on a Tuesday morning. I was holding her in my arms when my mother walked into the hospital room, perfume first, criticism second. She doesn't look like you at all, she said, smiling that cold smile that could slice through glass. Anna turned her head away, pretending not to hear. I just tightened my grip on the baby. When I didn't respond, my mother patted my arm. Don't worry, honey. There are ways to find out the truth. That was her way of saying, you'll thank me later. A few weeks after we brought Sophie home, my mother stopped visiting. No calls, no text messages. Anna said she was relieved. I was, too. Then one Sunday, she showed up at our door dressed like she was going to church, hair done, lipstick perfect, holding a white envelope. She didn't even sit down before she said it. I told you, Mark. I told you she's been lying to you. She placed the envelope on the table like it was a bomb and sat back with her arms folded. Anna froze. I remember her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the papers. The logo at the top said Ancestry Results. They're not mine, my mother said. Not one of them. I had my DNA tested with the kids. They're not my grandchildren. The air in the room went still. Anna looked at me like she'd been slapped. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. You what? I said. My mother smiled like someone who'd just won a war. Don't act surprised. I told you this would happen. You didn't believe me. Anna stood up, shaking. You stole our children's samples? Oh, don't exaggerate, my mother said. A little saliva from their toothbrushes, a few hairs, nothing harmful. I wanted to yell. I wanted to throw those papers in her face. But I just stood there, frozen. She went on, her voice calm and cutting. You're a good man, Mark. You deserve honesty. I just gave it to you. That night, Anna cried in the kitchen until her voice broke. I sat at the table staring at those pages over and over again, trying to make sense of the numbers, the percentages, the words no match found. My mind kept racing. Could it be a lab mistake? Was it even possible? Anna begged me to believe her. I did, at least I wanted to. But the seed was planted. Doubt, once it takes root, grows fast. The next morning, I ordered my own DNA test. Not because I believed my mother, but because I needed proof strong enough to silence her forever. I didn't tell her. I didn't even tell Anna at first. I swabbed my mouth, sealed the envelopes, and sent them off, feeling sick to my stomach. 2 weeks later, I got the email. Results ready. My hands were shaking as I opened the file. 3 green bars. Each one read paternity confirmed. 99.9999%. Relief flooded through me so hard I almost cried. Anna's innocence, proven beyond doubt. My mother's accusations, crushed. For a moment, I felt peace. Then I realized something didn't add up. If I was their father, and Anna was their mother, how could my mother not be their grandmother? That question sat in my head like a ticking bomb. The next day, I drove to her house with my results printed out. She opened the door already smiling, like she'd been expecting an apology. When I handed her the papers, the smile vanished. What is this? She asked. Proof, I said. You were wrong. They're my kids. She scanned the pages, her face tightening. Then that means your test was faked, or they mixed something up at the lab. No, I said quietly. It means something's wrong with your test. We stared at each other for a long time. Finally, she said, fine. Let's settle this once and for all. 2 days later, we both took new samples, mother and son, together. Same lab. Same envelope. No way to cheat, no confusion. When the technician sealed the bag, my mother looked at me and said, You'll see. This will explain everything. She was right. But not in the way either of us imagined. The email came 3 days later. Subject line, your DNA results are ready. I was at work, sitting in my truck, engine running, hands slick with sweat. My mother had texted an hour earlier, let's open them together. But I couldn't wait. I clicked the link. The screen loaded. My name. My profile. Then, her name, under the Potential Relatives tab. A single line of text beneath it, no biological relationship found. For a second, I thought I'd misread it. I refreshed the page. Then again. But it didn't change. My mother and I, zero genetic match. The world tilted. I remember gripping the steering wheel just to keep myself anchored. It was impossible. I could still see her face in my mind, the woman who'd patched up my scraped knees, stayed up all night when I had the flu, cheered for me at every graduation, every milestone. The woman who had raised me. And yet the screen was telling me she was, scientifically, a stranger. I sat there for 20 minutes, staring at the numbers, until my phone buzzed again. It was her. Did you open it? Mark, answer me. What does it say? I didn't reply. I drove straight to her house. She was standing in the living room when I walked in, still in her robe, laptop open on the coffee table. Her hands were shaking. When she saw me, her voice broke. It has to be a mistake, she said. They switched the samples again. I didn't answer. I handed her my phone. She looked down at it, and I watched the color drain from her face. No, she whispered. No, that's not possible. She sank onto the couch, eyes wide, trembling. For the first time in my life, I saw her afraid. We sat there in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, I said, Mom. She flinched when I said the word. And that hurt more than anything else. She whispered, don't call me that. Not until we figure this out. That sentence hit harder than any slap could have. I turned away before she could see my face break. The next morning, we went back to the lab together. The technician remembered us, 2 anxious faces, 1 shared test. He checked the reference numbers, the chain of custody, everything. No errors. No swaps. No duplicates. Sir, he said gently, I'm sorry. But the results are accurate. There's no genetic relationship between you two. My mother just stared at him. Then she whispered, then where is my son? That night, she called the hospital where I was born, St. Vincent's Maternity, 1989. The woman on the phone said most records from that era were archived, but she could request access. Mom insisted. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. Anna sat beside me in bed, holding my hand while I stared at the ceiling. What if it's true? I said quietly. What if I'm not her son? Anna didn't answer right away. Then she said, she is your mother, Mark. Whatever those papers say, she raised you. That doesn't change. I wanted to believe her. But my entire identity suddenly felt borrowed. 2 days later, the hospital called back. They found something, an incident report from my birth week. A power outage in the nursery wing. Several babies temporarily moved to another room. When power returned, there'd been confusion about ID bracelets. The report noted 2 male infants under investigation for mix-up. Both discharged within 24 hours. No follow-up documented. It hit us both at the same time. That was it. That was me. My mother, or the woman I thought was my mother, pressed her hand to her mouth. Oh my God, she whispered. They gave me someone else's baby. The following weeks were chaos. She filed official requests for hospital archives, tried to trace the other family involved. I started digging too. The other baby's last name, according to the file, was Connolly. The hospital refused to give out private contact info, but I found public records. There was a Michael Connolly, born the same day, same hospital. Lived 2 towns over. I found him on social media. Or rather, I found his mother. A gray-haired woman with kind eyes and old photos of a boy who looked eerily, like me. I didn't message her. I couldn't. How do you tell someone you might be the son she lost 35 years ago? Meanwhile, my mother spiraled. She went from furious to desperate. She tore through old baby albums, held my hospital bracelet up to the light, saying, look. It has your name on it. But even she knew names could be swapped. She started calling the other families who delivered that week, tracking anyone whose child was born around my time. I'd never seen her like that before, manic, broken, obsessed. One night, I came by to check on her. Her living room was filled with files, old notebooks, papers spread across the floor like a detective's board. She looked up at me, eyes red. I found him, she said. I froze. Who? My son, she whispered. My real son. She showed me a photo. A man in his 30s, dark hair, sharp jawline. He's alive, she said, smiling faintly. He lives in Montana. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to be happy for her. Part of me just felt displaced. As I left, she touched my arm. Her voice was soft. Mark, whatever happens, I want you to know something. I turned to her. I may not have given birth to you, she said, but I chose you. Every day, I chose you. Don't forget that. That was the first time she'd sounded like my mother again. And somehow, that hurt most of all. Grief changes shape depending on who you lose. When I lost my father, it was sudden, a hole I had to fill with responsibility. When I lost my mother, it was slow, a hole that kept widening the more I learned. She was still alive, of course. Still breathing, still calling. But every conversation now began with the same sentence. I found another lead. It became her new religion. Finding her real son. At first, I tried to help. We divided tasks, she'd chase medical records, I'd trace the Connolly family. It felt like working on two parallel cases where the culprit was time itself. The hospital's archive department sent us scanned copies of discharge records from the week I was born. 2 mothers, 2 male infants, both weighed the same, both circumcised on the same day, both released within an hour of each other. And then, handwritten notes in the margins, like ghosts whispering from the past. Bracelet tag reprinted. Mother anxious about ID mix-up. Parents notified, confirmed correct infant. Except, no one ever verified it. I was reading the story of my own misplacement, written in blue ink 35 years ago. I contacted the Connolly family through an old email address I'd found on a genealogy site. A week later, I got a reply. Hi, I'm Karen Connolly. You said you were born at St. Vincent's in '89? My son Michael was too. Why are you asking? I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time before typing back. I think there might have been a mix-up at the hospital. I'm trying to confirm. No response that day. Or the next. But on the third day, a message arrived with an attachment. It was an old photo, a toddler sitting on the floor in a blue onesie, holding a wooden truck. Same dark eyes. Same crooked smile. Except it wasn't me. He looks a bit like you, she wrote. Funny coincidence. I didn't have the courage to reply. Meanwhile, my mother had found someone, a retired nurse who'd worked in the nursery wing the year I was born. Her name was Carol. We drove 2 hours to meet her in person. She remembered the blackout. The confusion. The panic when the backup generator failed. The tags were handwritten that night, she said. The machine wasn't working. Then she looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly. You said you were born to Mrs. Holbrook, right? I nodded. She sighed. I remember that name. Sweet woman. But I also remember the Connolly baby. The 2 boys did look similar. She didn't say more, but the look in her eyes told us everything. On the drive home, my mother was quiet. For once, there were no theories, no files, no accusations. Just silence, the kind that comes after the truth lands and nothing feels real anymore. Finally, she said, what if he's happy? The other boy, my real son. What if finding him ruins his life? I didn't know how to answer. Because I'd been wondering the same thing about my real parents. The next week, I got a call from Karen Connolly. Her voice was shaky. I did another ancestry test for Michael. It says he's not related to me or my husband. Not even distantly. I froze. She took a breath. I think you're my son, Mark. My throat closed up. She went on, I don't want to intrude. I just thought you should know. Your father passed away a few years ago. But we've always wondered. There were rumors back then, but no proof. I couldn't speak. All I could think was that somewhere, for 3 decades, 2 mothers had been loving the wrong sons. When I told my mother, the one who raised me, she didn't cry. She just nodded slowly, like she'd been expecting it all along. She deserves to know you, she said. And you deserve to know her. Then, almost in a whisper, maybe we can fix what they broke. We agreed to meet the Canellas halfway, in a small diner outside Helena, Montana. Karen was already there when we arrived. She stood as we walked in, her hands trembling, tears already streaming down her cheeks. She didn't hesitate, she just hugged me. And for the first time in my life, I felt something ancient. Familiar in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't warmth exactly. It was recognition. We spent hours talking. About my childhood. About hers. About Michael, the son she'd raised who turned out to be the child my mother had lost. He'd grown up rough. Dropped out of school. Trouble with the law. Died in an accident 5 years ago. When she told us that, my mother broke down completely. I should have been there, she sobbed. I should have. Karen reached over and took her hand. You were a mother, she said softly. Just to mine. The irony was cruel, both women had loved sons that weren't theirs, and both had lost the ones that were. But in that diner, between 2 mothers and 2 stories, I realized something. Maybe love wasn't about biology. Maybe it was about endurance. When we left, Karen hugged me again. She pressed something into my hand, a photo of a little boy holding a toy truck. Keep it, she said. So you'll know the face that almost was. That night, I drove my mother home. She stared out the window the whole way. When we pulled into her driveway, she whispered, I don't know who I am anymore. I said quietly, you're still my mom. She smiled faintly. Am I? Yes, I said. You're the only one I've ever had. She reached over and squeezed my hand. And for the first time since that cursed DNA test, I saw peace in her eyes. In the weeks after Montana, the house felt different. Quieter. Softer somehow, as if the walls themselves were relieved that the truth was finally out. My mother stopped digging through archives. No more printed forms, no late-night calls to old nurses. Instead, she started gardening again. Planting tulips. It was her way of saying, I'm done searching. For the first time in months, life began to resemble life. I kept in touch with Karen Connolly. We talked on the phone sometimes, awkward at first, then easier. She'd tell me about her late husband, about Michael's childhood, about how she always felt something was off when she held him, though she could never name it. I told her about my own kids, Ben, Lily, and baby Sophie, and she cried quietly. 3 grandchildren, she whispered. I never thought I'd get to say that. I didn't know what to call her. Karen felt too cold, Mom felt wrong. So I settled on what my kids started calling her, Grandma K. Meanwhile, my mother, the one who'd raised me, surprised everyone. She invited Karen over. They sat together at the kitchen table where months earlier she'd accused my wife of cheating. Now, there were teacups, photo albums, and a silence that wasn't hostile anymore. I stayed back, listening. Karen showed a baby picture of Michael. My mother traced his face with her fingertip. He had your eyes, she said softly. Karen smiled through tears. And your stubborn chin. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something close. Later that night, my mother came into the living room where I was playing with the kids. She sat down beside me and said, You know what I realized today? I've been trying to prove something my whole life. Prove what? That I was right. About your wife. About the tests. About everything. She laughed, shaking her head. Turns out the only thing I was right about was loving the wrong boy. I looked at her, then at my children crawling across the rug. You didn't love the wrong boy, I said. You loved the one you had. That's what matters. She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. That's what I needed to hear. In the months that followed, our families started blending in small, imperfect ways. Karen visited on holidays. My mother sent her flowers on her birthday. They even argued over who got to bake which pie, a weird, beautiful kind of rivalry. One day, I caught them sitting on the porch together, laughing about something on the phone. I didn't interrupt. For once, everything felt right. But peace doesn't come without ghosts. Sometimes I'd catch my mother looking at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, a faint sadness in her eyes. Like she was still wondering what her real son might have been like if life hadn't switched us. I finally asked her once. Do you wish you could have raised him instead of me? She looked up, startled. Then she smiled, a small, tired smile. No, she said. Because then he would have been the one losing you. That's when I knew the search was over, not because we'd found answers, but because we'd found meaning. A year later, we gathered everyone, both families, for Sophie's first birthday. The yard was full of balloons, children's laughter, and 2 women who once had every reason to hate each other now standing side by side, cutting cake. At one point, my mother leaned toward me and said, I used to think blood defined family. Now I think blood just starts it. Love finishes the job. She wasn't quoting anyone. She'd earned that sentence herself. When the party was over and the guests gone, she and I sat outside watching the lights dim. I asked her if she'd ever thought about what could have been, if we'd never found out, if the DNA tests had stayed in their envelopes. She nodded. I used to wish that. But now I'm glad we opened them. Why? Because now I know that even the ugliest truths can make room for better ones. Sometimes, when I tuck my kids into bed, I think about the chain of accidents that made me who I am, the blackout in the maternity ward, the misplaced tags, 2 mothers living each other's lives without knowing. It's terrifying, how fragile identity is. But it's also comforting, how love can rebuild it. I still keep that photo Karen gave me. The one of the little boy holding the toy truck. It sits on my desk beside another picture, me, my wife, my kids, and the woman who raised me. Different faces. Same story. Every time I look at them, I remember what my mother said that night in the hospital all those years ago. Don't be naive, Mark. Make sure that baby's yours. She was wrong about the test, but right about something bigger. Family isn't proven in a lab. It's proven in the living.